Everyone, once again, and it looks like it's just four of us this evening, but no matter. Let me just share. Please, as I'm going through, as I said earlier, as I'm going through everything, please do wait. I need to set my settings there properly, my sharing settings. Did anybody respond to the WhatsApp? No one.
Not as yet, no.
Okay. All right, let me see the side-by-side, stand out, side-by-side, reporter. I don't know. Let's see which one works better. Alrighty, you guys don't need French subtitles. How's that? So you can see me on the one side and you can see the screen on the other side, correct?
Correct, yes.
Awesome. Just a quick checking. In terms of the material, in terms of the quizzes, in terms of the videos, in terms of the readings, I know there was quite an issue which I resolved on the discussion. So all of the discussions are open. You can make notes. The discussions aren't for marks, but they're really cool. I've really sort of given some thought into putting some articles and things which are sort of quite interesting, and sort of, even if you just spend half an hour on watching a little video and sort of engaging in the questions, it will give you a bit of a deeper understanding. I mean, in last week's one, which is the Enron one, which is, I mean, geez, that is just, yeah. But I mean, we also had Steinhoff in South Africa, which similarly was absolutely a house of cards built on just, we only now, the report, they haven't released the report. So we actually don't know what the auditors found at the end of it. So it is quite a, it's very interesting. But so many thousands of people just lost their investment, lost their pension, lost their life savings in the Steinhoff thing. All right. So, as I said, I'm going to go through just very briefly on King IV, and then I will go over the assignment. I'll spend a bit more time there, and we can then sort of talk through it. Please ask questions. It is recorded, so you can go back to it. So corporate governance, as I've been saying, is defined as the exercise of ethical and effective leadership. It's this idea that corporates have a persona, that's an equal partner in society, and it needs to be seen as having a moral and ethical obligation as a corporate, as a citizen within greater society. But in addition to that, because of our relationship with organizations, especially for-profit organizations, where they extract natural resources in the form of energy, in the form of natural resources, lands, all of the stuff that they extract, convert, and sell, and generate value from that in terms of shareholder and stakeholder value. They need to be held to a much greater standard than just us as people. So, and if you approach it from that point of view, if you approach it from that idea that all organizations, especially for-profit organizations, have a moral obligation to society as a whole, then we need to hold them to account. We need to hold them to account. They need to hold themselves to a higher standard. But the bigger question is always, who watches the watchers? Who looks after these mega corporations? And it is absolutely frightening how these technology companies, how big these technology companies have become. There are in certain countries where 95% of the population receive all of the news from Facebook. Now, if Facebook is a for-profit company, So it's driven by for-profit motives. And it's about engagement, because engagement sells eyeballs, and eyeballs generates margin for them, attention. That's because we're the product. Just think about that. If 95% of the population only read Facebook for all of their news, they can be told anything. These massive corporates, these massive technology companies are even they what we call transfrontier. So normal companies that manufacture stuff, Unilever, these massive multinationals. There's only about 10 multinationals that sort of sells and produces most things in the world. Nestle, Unilever, PepsiCo, all these, they make foodstuffs, they make personal care products, they make consumer products that we buy and we consume, and they're huge around the world. They come into a country, they set up manufacturing facilities, and they are registered in that country where they manufacture, and they sell to the population of that country. They are easy to manage, they are easy to oversee, they're easy to be held accountable. A technology company is an app, piece of software. There is no The Google office in South Africa that looks after Africa, Middle East, consists of something like 25 people. And they don't need to be in South Africa. They can be based anywhere. So technology companies are much harder to police. They're much harder to be held accountable, because Facebook isn't in South Africa. They all operate out of the US. Facebook, Alphabet, Twitter. These are massive companies. They are very different from consumer goods companies, which have a much. Just hold on one second. I just want to check if I am recording. Okay, I am recording. My apologies. I just wanted to make sure that I am recording. They are much harder to police. They impossible to police almost. Just recently, the European Union has started forcing some of these companies to be more accountable. They started forcing them to be to pay for certain things. Like in Australia, Facebook wasn't happy because Australia was saying to them, "You must pay our local news corporations for the news that you presenting on Facebook, because it's not your work; it is somebody else's work that you effectively giving to your users for free." So these are much bigger issues, especially pertaining to these massive technology companies, which are really testing all of our current laws around governance. They fundamentally rewriting the way we hold companies accountable. So let's understand a bit about King IV, why it's incorporated, improved corporate governance practices in South Africa. It's built with trust, with stakeholders, not just shareholders, and support long-term creation. It's about integrated thinking. It's not about, so when we talk about sustainability, I talked about it, I think, right at the beginning. Sustainability is almost like four legs of a table, in which one leg is it's environmental stewardship, social responsibility, and then financial sustainability, making good capital decisions for the long term. And then the third or the fourth leg is sort of governance, corporate governance, transparency, and accountability. And that sort of integrated thinking around everything from environmental stewardship to social responsibility to making sustainable long-term decisions, financial decisions for its shareholders, and also then sort of corporate governance that is transparent, that's accountable. That's integrated thinking. So it looks at stakeholder inclusivity. How do we bring in our stakeholders, which is government, which is communities in which they're operating. It is the environmental agencies. It is the way companies sort of take stewardship or environmental responsibility for where they operate. And again, this is sort of juxtaposed against the tech companies where they're not selling physical products. So they're not, I mean, they're not harming the environment, are they? But they are. They've got these massive data centers that draws huge amount of power and huge amount of energy, and not sustainable energy, still fossil fuels. They using, hardware that is built with rare earth materials, not just rare earth materials, but contains sort of certain things like, that can only be found in certain countries, So these, even though it's an app, there's Sophia, I see your hand. Just because it's an app doesn't mean it doesn't have an impact on the environment. Yes, Sophie, you've got a question.
So a lot of companies that are technologically based, like Facebook and whatever, they've had to upgrade their policies to protect people from bullying and all of that, and as well as spreading hateful speech. Do you think that could somehow be incorporated into King Code, or is it not necessarily related? Because it does maybe affect the social aspect of life, with people.
That's a very interesting way of looking at it. No, absolutely. Because I mean, yeah. So then the big question is, it's hate speech for who? For whom? So you're going to have to you're saying that things that impact and affect society as a whole, doesn't matter which political spectrum you're from, doesn't matter what your political or religious beliefs is, it is seen as harmful to society. Then absolutely. Once we start policing political viewpoints, that is where things get interesting, because who decides what is right and what is wrong? It depends on what your political views are. And then the question is, should that be written into a corporate governance code that sort of ultimately guides investors in terms of how they make investing decisions? Because ultimately, one would think that King does guide investing decisions, and some big pension funds use the King code as a guide for investing, making investment decisions, but not always. Hey, if they spot a company that can generate good returns for them, in terms of their mandate, which is to look after pensioners' money and increase in value, but obviously make lots and lots in fees, and also invest responsibly. So yes, that's a very interesting way of looking at it. Absolutely, and possibly that is something. When we get to the assignment, I mean, if you choose a technology company, or if you choose, because it does ask for a local company, but I'm not too hung up about that. But if you are going to choose a company outside of South Africa and you choose a tech company, it's going to be quite interesting to see how you would apply King in that respect. Good, thank you very much. That's a good question. So let me move on very quickly. The key concepts in King IV is the triple context: economic, social, environmental. And then also I would go so far as to say, because King is all about governance, I would even go so far as to say that when we talk about capital investment decisions, those also have a big impact on the long-term sustainability of the company. And that's why when you look at the 6 capitals, which is financial, manufactured, intellectual, human, social, and natural, and that is that integrated reporting. And if you look at the Sibanye-Stillwater, which is the discussion for this week, and a great example of how they use the and concept. It's not just indicate or note or tell and explain, or tell or explain. It is now tell and explain how they use, because there's 17 principles, and you have to now, with King IV, you have to say where you've applied it, and the principles that you've not applied, explain why you have not applied it. Whereas before, you only need to tell where you've applied it, without having to explain where you have not applied it and why you've not applied it. So the Sibanye-Stillwater example is a brilliant example of how they literally go principle for principle and explain to you exactly how they've applied it and where they've applied it. Integrated thinking is about aligning strategy, risk, performance, and sustainability. Strategy is about long-term sustainability. How do you craft a set of actions? Strategy is all about taking a series of actions in order to achieve a specific goal that's aligned to good governance, corporate responsibility, and sustainability. It's the ethical foundation for decision making. Where do I invest my capital, my capex, my capital budget, and how do I invest that? If I have a choice to invest in a country that maybe has less than ideal or challenging political environment, then maybe that's not such a good idea. So it's about using the King always as this guideline to say, if we're making these big capital decisions, especially when it comes to financial decisions, strategic decisions, is it ethically right to be operating in this country, or ethically right to be even selling a specific product in a specific way? Think about unethical products that were sold not so long ago, 10, 15 years ago. Skin lightening creams. Skin lightening creams was a big seller, was a massive market in South Africa. And the question is it an ethical product? And there was pressure put on retailers to stop stocking it. So you can still find it, but you'll find it in sort of informal retail, taxi stations, taxi ranks, those type of places, selling at tables and things. But pretty much the big retailers have taken it off the shelf, because there was quite significant pressure put on retailers to discontinue products like that. It came from quite a pressure group that sort of looked at it and said, this is unethical. Why are we still selling skin lightening creams in modern day South Africa? So that was quite an interesting case in South Africa about products that was seen to be unethical, that was seen to be harmful to wider society. Yet it was bought by many millions of people. So retailers made it less accessible. It's about connecting the internal and external factors and then applied across the entire business model. So the governing body is quite an important part of King. It provides ethical and cultural leadership for the organization. It manages stakeholder relationships, and then also looks at remuneration and assurance. So renum is a big thing, and that's become quite significant over the last couple of years, where there's this massive distance between the lowest paid worker in organizations and the CEO remuneration has become extraordinary over the last 10 years. We've never seen a pay gap this big in all of history, where and even more so the question within the South African context, where there's so much poverty and such high rate of employment, is it really ethical to be paying a South African CEO 250 million a year or 300 million rand a year? And that's it's not just a moral question, it's an ethical question. It's completely legal. And we're back to the question last week about legality, morality, and ethics. It's completely legal. Companies can decide how much they want to pay their executives and their CEOs. It is up to them. And if the board which is the oversight and is ultimately accountable. And if the board agrees to it, and then they agree to it. The board, remember, is a combination, is the voices of the shareholders. And if they agree to it, then they agree to it. But the question is it really ethical? Is it really moral to be paying someone in South Africa 300 million a year? The counter argument is that we don't have the talent in South Africa. We don't have a pool of CEOs that we can draw from. It's not very competitive, and they're very few. It's highly skilled, and we have to compete not just against within South Africa, but against companies around the world. Therefore, we have to compare a 300 million South African rand salary to a $20 million salary, equivalent salary. And if that's the case, the 300 million doesn't come close. So that's the counter argument. So RENAM is meant to align with sort of the ethics of, and also how the company's seen, how the company's sort of remunerating their executives and their CEOs, So yeah, it's quite a significant part of the King IV. They actually go in quite great detail around remuneration. King IV, however, is not legally binding. It is completely voluntary. These are some guidelines that we think would be good for you. And as I said, it's replaced the comply or explain has replaced by apply and explain. So here's the 17 principles. Tell us where you've applied it, and then explain to us where you've not applied it and why you have not applied it in that way. Again, not all companies have to abide by King IV. However, it's almost like peer pressure of companies. It's industry pressure on companies in South Africa, specifically in South Africa, with all of the fraud, with all of the corruption taking place. It's almost seen to be, you have to comply with King IV, or else you're not seen as a legitimate company. You're not seen as having any legitimacy because it's almost seen like if you don't comply with King IV, then you got something to hide, and if you got something to hide, then, we sort of stay away from you. And it's regarded as best practice in South Africa. The 17 principles across 5 governance outcomes, as I said: culture, ethical culture, good performance, effective control, legitimacy, and stakeholder inclusivity. Please go through those 17 principles. You are going to need to go through it for your assignment. So let me take a bit of a breather there very quickly, because I also need water. Any questions at this point? Just very quickly before I go on to the assessment. Can I just have a thumbs up as a proof of life to see that you're all still there?
Sorry, sir.
Yes.
For the assignment, for the group assignment, I saw that you sent an email, I don't know when it was, last week, to say that we should be familiarized with the people in our group. But I still can't get a hold of one of the group member. I messaged in the group, but nobody responded, so I have no idea.
Have you emailed by any chance?
No, I don't have the email. I just sent it in the group chat. I don't.
Okay, so if you go onto the SACAP, to my SACAP, you can actually email students. So you can email, so the same place where you email me, you can also email a student. So you can just type in their name and their name will come up, or their email address will come up. You can also go onto the course and you can email other students. I think so. If by the end of the week you still haven't gotten anything, please let me know ASAP, so we can reach out, because sometimes also people drop out and we don't know.
Okay, so we'll do.
Yeah, so that's important. Okay, great stuff. Thank you very much. So as I said, the Sibanye-Stillwater is a great example. It's the only one locally I could find. I actually searched quite high and low for a good example or something that is just sort of easy to understand. And the way they presented it as well, it is very easy. I mean, even I understand it as well, because I mean, this is not one of my areas of expertise. My area is really strategy and leadership, where governance and ethics is a component of that. Even I could understand it. So as a non-legal person, I could understand it quite well. So hopefully it would be of use for you to go through it. So the assignment review, it's in two parts. It's a white paper, and then it is a contextualization, or almost like a case study, almost, where you're looking for a local company and you take them and you dissect them. So let's 1,700 words, the white paper. So part A, let's go through part A. And you have to write. So don't get too hung up about a white paper. It's not terribly different from a assignment, but it must have just very much a title page, a table of contents, some visuals, structured content. So instead of a assignment, we'll just have paragraphs. This is sort of structured, and it tells a story. So it starts off with, this is the introduction, this is the different sections of it, and you go through it. And this is about informing and implementation using King IV, the United Nations Development Goals, or UNGC, and some South African examples. Consists of an executive summary, which is about 150 words, a main body of 1,350 words, 4 sections, 300 and ish each, conclusion, recommendations, and this is important. It's conclusion and recommendations with a total of 1,700 words. I will accept up until 20% over, and 20% in this case would take you to about 2,000 words. But as I always tell students, that it takes time to be brief. It's a quote from Benjamin Franklin, that he wrote a letter to his good friend, and he said, and he starts off the letter with, I apologize for not taking the time to be brief. It takes time to be brief. It actually takes longer to write fewer or more condensed than it takes to write a lot. So what makes a good white paper? Let me just move. Yes, Rafia.
Theo, I have a question, right? So the 8 credible sources, so he's taking information from the website of Department of Trade and Industry, for example. Is it credible, or does it have to be articles, journals, books, that sort of thing? Because I see I've got this thing open in front of me, and I think on the last page it says there are no websites. So because there's some info, when I started doing the research, there's some really cool and interesting information on some of the company's websites. For example, I think the one that I read now recently was there were some statistics on the World Bank, for example, on poverty and unemployment in South Africa. So does that count as credible sources, or will we be penalized for that?
So it's always good to find the primary source. So if you're reading that on a website and they're quoting the World Bank, then it is good to find the primary source. So it is good to go to the World Bank website and try to find the primary report that the World Bank released. So that would be credible, if that makes sense. Rather than quoting the World Bank off a website that you've read. So in that case, so that answers one part of the question. The other part of the question, Department of Trade and Industry, that's a credible website to get guiding information on. So you won't quote the Department of Trade and Industry to substantiate a point. You'll say, in a guideline released by the Department of Trade and Industry, it is recommended that companies do the following. When you're making a point, when you do, generally speaking, you'll set a scene, you'll set a framework, and you say, this is what I'm working within, and then you'll sort of make sort of academic, you'll start telling the story. And as you start telling the story, you support it with the credible sources. So if it's supporting evidence, it needs to be a credible source. If it's a guideline, Department of Trade and Industry, that sets out the guideline or framework, you draw it from there. And that is fine. So always try to get to the primary source as much as you can. Does that answer the question?
Yes, thank you so much. And just to rephrase what you said, the white paper doesn't need to be fancy. It's all going to be on this on the SACAP template on the Word document, straightforward. You don't want, because this thing here, I think when I'm reading it on the first, I think it's on page 14, right? So it says here, the white paper must be highly professional and aligned with the firm's brand positioning. So I wasn't sure, do you want us to like do a branding for, Pan Africa Advisory Services, or is it just plain text?
No, just plain text. But again, it needs to be sort of laid out very much like, in a report form. And reports generally have sort of headings and subheadings. You use visuals, you use flowcharts and everything. You use little pictures to signify a framework, etc. Those are things that you can use in reports that you can't use in academic essay. So there's not an academic essay. Academic essay generally is just text. This is a sort of formal report, if that makes sense, which means that you can use visuals as long as, once again, you reference those visuals appropriately.
Thanks.
And I want to see visuals because I really don't want to mark 25 long 2,500 word just text essays, please. So make it interesting, make it engaging, make it, that I would like to look at it, but also don't go wild. Also don't go wild with like 5 different colors, please don't do many different colors. You can maybe do one color, you can maybe make your main headings like blue and then leave the rest, but don't do blue and beige and then brown and, yeah.
Yeah, it would have been so nice if we could do it on PowerPoint, because to do those things on PowerPoint is so much easier. Word literally distorts those graphs. But we'll figure it out.
Have a look at have a look at like a UN report. Have a look at some of these agencies that deliver reports, and you'll see how those reports look. They're pretty good. They're well designed. You can see it's somebody that actually has some sort of design experience that put it together, Obviously, I don't expect you to do sort of double columns, with floating pictures and tables and those type of things.
Okay.
But there's a lot you can do. So for a report, generally you align the text, whereas for academic essay you tend not to align the text. So for a report you tend to align the text like this. You justify it. Robin?
So how do you reference visuals?
If it's something that you created yourself, then there's no need to reference, but you do need to reference where you got the information in. And this is where ChatGPT can come in very useful. ChatGPT, Gemini, you can make. I've started making visuals in this AI things, which is like graphs and flowcharts and things. It is amazing what you can do if you just prompt it properly. Then obviously, you'll reference the image, made by ChatGPT on the 7th of October, blah, blah.
Okay.
Yeah, you reference it like
Okay.
that. If it's something that you're making yourself, you don't reference it, but you reference the information, So you'll say information supplied by, or you can say in the flowchart below one, with information based on the King IV report, one can see how the different things, that type of stuff. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Sophie and Robin.
Robin was first, so.
Okay. Okay,
No,
Robin.
sorry, I don't know why is it still there. It's a mistake.
Okay.
For the charts, whether we get the information from, I don't know, any source and we make it on our own, or ChatGPT does make it, do we have to kind of put like as a caption under it? Because I've seen in like journal articles that sometimes if there is a diagram, it's kind of like referenced as a caption, or would we just say like picture 1 and then in our reference list would say that information was from there?
Yes. So if the picture is a direct copy of a website, you'll reference it, source www something something World Bank, and then you'll obviously in your reference list you'll note it. But if it's your own creation, so generally only speaking your own creation. So if you're creating your own charts, if you're creating your own flow diagrams, you'll say diagram 1, or you'll say, picture 1 or something, or table 1. And then you'll have a list of tables or a list of diagrams.
Okay,
included
cool.
included in your references. Yeah. Yes, Rafia?
Yeah, I'm probably exposing my knowledge gaps. So, for example, like in some of these cases that you've provided us, like the Sibanye-Stillwater case, for example, there is some really good information there.
Yeah.
Are we allowed to use that as credible sources?
You can use it as an example.
Sure. Yeah. More as an example. Sure. Because even the SAPI case has some really great examples. Okay, cool. Thanks.
So you'll make a point and you'll make a statement. You'll support it with some evidence, and you say, here's an example of, or illustrated in the 2025 integrated report from SAPI. One can see, you take a little picture or a little slice of the report, how they've done this, and that's absolutely fine. That's good, especially if you visually want to indicate and show. Okay, good.
Thanks.
So let me just quickly go through the different. This presentation I will upload for you tomorrow when I upload this recording. Executive summary, 150 words. These words are just indicative and they come from the assignment. And again, it's about purpose of the paper, why it matters. And you'll give a bit of a summary. You generally write the summary last. And this is where AI is useful, where you put your report in and say, write an executive summary of 150 words, and we'll take the entire thing and we'll give you an executive summary. You then take that as a draft, and then you sort of humanize it. You write it in your own words, especially now as we all using AI more and more, we're beginning to recognize sort of AI, what I call AI slop. Those, it sounds great, but it says nothing. So when it does, but doing summaries, doing executive summaries and those type of stuff, AI is great for that, because it takes your own information and it summarizes it, and then it's just about you then humanizing it and writing it over into more of your own voice, so that it sounds more like you. All right. So section 1 was South African corporate citizenship landscape. Define the landscape, analyze 3+ economic factors, examine 2 challenges, 2 opportunities, include some recent stats. This is a good one. Please go and see if you can access a stats essay for some recent stats. the UN UNGC principles using South Africa business examples, and then use local issues. Try to bring it into local. We all know the big South African issues, which is one, poverty, inequality, unemployment, energy insecurity, food insecurity, and how do those align with what corporates are doing? Try to use real examples, as I said earlier. Align it to the UNGC, human rights, labor, environment, anti-corruption, and so forth. And then use recent JSE as well. That's stats SA data. The JSE also is free. Hey, you can access a lot of reports, company reports on the JSE, reports that they have to submit as part of their governance, as part of their legal requirement, audit requirements. So you can access quite a few things on the JSE website as well. Section 2, King IV and citizenship, about 350 words. Identify 3 relevant King IV principles, compare King IV to earlier versions. Provide 4 implementation frameworks. So here's the places where you can start putting in little graphs, little sort of framed, little sort of pictures of a framework, of a flow diagram, like compare the earlier versions. That's a nice table. You don't need to write 2 paragraphs on that. You can put a little table together and you can compare King 3, King 2, King 4, King 3, King 4, and you can pull out relevant information that you can put into a little table, and underneath that you can write, like literally 3 or 4 sentences that describes the information in the table. Discuss reporting requirements and best practice, the triple context is capitals, and the governing body. Make sure that you've got choose relevant principles. Ethical leadership, performance, inclusivity, use company reports, use the table to compare. As I said, yeah, there we go. Use the table to compare King 3 versus 4, and specifically explain the apply and explain versus the comply, and explain principle. Section 4. Sorry, I'm just busy trying to move you around. Systems theory to explain sustainability. That's a very good one. A very good framework to use to explain sustainability, interconnected systems. Discuss at least 3+ South African relevant climate change impacts, 4+ practical climate strategies, South African case examples, include a diagram of environmental, society, and economy links. Again, a little diagram that sort of connects them. And then 2 or 3 sentences to explain the connection, to explain how and why they connect in the way that they do, and link to relevant development goals, sustainable development goals. Meadows, Capro, Laszlo, water scarcity, carbon tax, grid pressure, and you'll see that that Woolworths comes up quite often. Woolies is very good. They literally call their annual report a annual integrated report, which is comprehensive. If you go through it, it is comprehensive. It touches on all of the key King principles, and it's beautifully presented, very aesthetically pleasing. They sort of choose a theme for it, and they'll have background and the colors and everything. So it looks beautiful, but the content is also good. If you compare Woolworths annual integrated report to a ShopRite annual integrated report, it's like chalk and cheese, because the one looks pretty and the other one is, here's the information. Read it, and this is what I need to give you. And the other one is like, ooh, let me page some more. Ooh, there's some more. Ooh, let me page some more. All these happy, smiley people. Ooh, look at all those fresh letters. Yeah, they always have letters in there. That's Woolworths now. I'm not talking about ShopRite. Section 4, ethics and corporate citizenship. Define ethics and morality versus legal compliance. That's a conversation we had last week. Examine South African codes, doing good to do well, and then discuss the dilemmas. That sort of tension that we have, and then South African examples like Capitec, around Trust, Steinhoff, around failure. Frameworks, duty versus outcome-based thinking, and then King for ethical codes, and so the link between ethics and legitimacy. I always sometimes would ask a one deeply moral or ethical question is, if, I think I asked it last week, which is, if BATSA, which is South African British American Tobacco, decides to sponsor school libraries for poor schools that can't afford libraries, and they're building these libraries with like R500,000 worth of books in it, and computer labs to be able for children that would never be able to access these resources. Is it morally acceptable to accept it for the school if it's a primary school? Something to think about. That kids would never be able to access those resources, but BATSA is BATSA. They sell cigarettes. It's like as a brewery sponsoring a primary school feeding scheme. It's difficult questions. I mean, you'll just say no. It's how could they? But then you go, but that child is getting food. They'll be able to learn better. They'll be able to develop better their brain development, because there's a link between learning and nutrition, and it's a well-known link between kids learn better if they have the right nutrition, their brains develop, and all of these things. But they sell alcohol, Yeah. Some things to think about, to hold on to. So please just make sure that you've got, in terms of use headings, topic sentences, include tables, diagrams, avoid first-person voice. You're writing in a third-person professional tone. Again, there's that fine line between writing a report and also writing an academic essay. So just be mindful of that, especially how you reference. Because an academic essay, you literally will have index references everywhere. So just be mindful when you're writing the report in terms of the flow and the look of it, not to just dump a lot of index references in there, and sort of weave it into your sentences. According to Laszlo, this and this and this. This author points out that this and this and this, rather than just having index referencing. But so part B, it's a lot easier, a lot straightforward. It's an ethical case study. This is where you have to choose, you have to get one. You have to do a case description, ethical dilemma, ethical framework application, ethical decision-making process, as well as recommendations and justification. Describe all the stakeholders, describe the central dilemma, include economic and social and environmental context, be objective, describe the dilemma, don't resolve it. And then you need to give an ethical framework application. A consequentialist theory, utilitarianism, non-consequentialist theory, maybe Kantian ethics, compare how each of these theories interprets the case, analyze the strengths and limitations of each perspective, but go beyond definitions. Apply this to the case. It's not just about, here's the definitions, but this is how Kantian ethics applies to this particular case. Use the 5-step model. Identify ethical issues, gather the information, identify affected parties, evaluate alternatives, implement the best option. This is part of your decision-making process. Discuss the legal and ethical tension, because the dilemmas that you might have is not illegal. That might just be ethical in nature. And that tension, between surely they should be illegal. Then you realize, but it's actually not. It is completely legal. And that tension between it. And then also consider the organization's values, be practical and systematic. Make clear ethical recommendations justified using ethical principles, and link back to the earlier analysis to be consistent in all of it in terms of part B. Try not for part B to, so the first part is a report. So that's almost like a standalone submission. And then you have part B. So the question is, how do you integrate part A and part B into one document? Especially if you're talking about your, so if you've got a page of contents and your executive summary. So executive summary would read something like, the first section, part A of this report deals with this and this and this, and it gives us this and this and this. Part B of the report deals with a real world example in which some of these principles are applied. So your page of contents would have a clear delineation. Part A, a section with all of the sections, headers, and subsection headers, and then part B with also its section and section header section. But it's one report that has two sections to it. The one side of it, you've got a bit more sort of lever, but in terms of the overall look and feel, make sure that the look and feel is the same. It is one, treat it as one report with divided into two different sections. Think of the first part as the theory, and the second part is the application or case analysis, as they call it. All right. Any questions? I know I've run through it quickly, but the presentation will be available to you. So please do go. It is very basic, sort of very basic notes. So please do have a look at it. Yeah, I don't know who was first. So I think it might have been Robin, followed by Candace, and then Rafia.
I just want to ask if the references should be at the end, completely at the end, and not like separate reference lists.
It's one report, so one list of references.
Okay, so
One list of references, one list of tables, one list of graphs, or one list of diagrams. Yeah.
okay.
Oh, Candace?
That was literally my question as well, just clarification on layout.
Okay.
Thank you for that.
Good. Rafia? Or Rafia?
Yeah. Rafia is fine. So part A. So the executive summary, the main content, and the recommendations, that belongs to part A, and then part B. So the executive summary doesn't include part B, right? It's just for part A.
Yeah. So now this is where
it gets complicated.
Because then you should almost have like two executive summaries or two introductions. You should almost have like an introduction. So you should have like a standard introduction, say, this academic submission consists of two parts. Part A will consist of a white paper report, blah, 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 and part B will this. And then you start part A, executive summary. And then in part B, you'll have introduction to part B. So that should be the ideal. But now we're getting onto words. Yeah,
because the module outline is like, so for part A, for the executive summary, it's got 150 words, and for the conclusion and recommendations, got a recommendation of 200 words. So I think that's where I'm getting a bit confused.
Yeah. So what I would do
because even for sorry, Theo. So for part B, yeah. So the ethical case analysis, that's supposed to be 800 words. And if I look at the structure of it, so you need to give the case description for 150 words. And then there's another recommendation and justification as well under that.
Yes, which is the final section. Yeah. So for me, it will be acceptable. If you're going to have one page of contents and one reference, then the first executive summary, for me, it would be acceptable if that executive summary is inclusive of the entire submission.
Okay.
So it's 150 words is not a lot, and you can clearly state this report consists of two sections. Part A is this and this, and part B is this and this. And you can say in part A, we will be discussing this and this, or this and this is covered, or it is covered in this way, and part B. So for me, that would be acceptable.
Okay. So,
Because then you'll end up, and then the recommendations, justifications, or the recommendations would only be for that particular section. So at the end of part A, you'll have you can clearly state the recommendations based on part A, for part A only, is the following.
okay. All right,
And
cool.
again, it's just about flow, and it's also not adding extra stuff. Because, I mean, if you look at the marking rubric, the executive summary is like, it's not it's not a lot of marks, so I mean, even if you mess it up, it's not like you're gonna lose a lot of points, so for me, just to make it absolutely simple, it will be acceptable for me if you just have one combined executive summary that talks to the entire report, talks to the entire submission, let me use those words, which is inclusive of A and B. The recommendations is separate for each section because that's the structure of it.
Right.
Cool.
Thank you. Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks.
All right. And I don't want to mark more than I have to. For me, what's that?
This looks like it's gonna be a few days of work. So I wouldn't tell anybody to do it that last week before submissions. There you're looking for problems.
Yeah. For me, it is. For me, a good submission is, I want to read through it and I want to see the tension. I want to see you wrestling with these concepts. I want to see you. There's no black and white. Excuse the choice of words, but there's no cut and dry. There's no black and white when it comes to corporate governance, when it comes to ethics, when it comes to morality, when it comes to legality. Yes, there's a right and there's a wrong. That's what the law says. But when it comes to ethics, it becomes murky. It becomes interpretive. It becomes and as you can see from the different theories that we did last week, if the end justify the means, then that's the decision that the corporate will take. So for me, I'm going to see that wrestling. It doesn't have to be, yes, the presentation, it needs to be good, but I'm not looking for you to wow me with this in-depth, amazing, great sort of academic, well-researched submission. I just want you to be able to read through it and go, okay, no, this person, you can see they're struggling with this. You can see that it's not about just this and this. It is you can see from how they're writing, they're struggling with these concepts because they are not easy concepts to understand. Not to understand, but to apply. And also within our context, with just so much corruption, with so much, because you must remember, yes, we can blame our corrupt politicians, but their very helping hand was corporates and is corporate still. Corruption cannot happen from politicians only. You need the corporates on the other side to clean the money, to submit the invoices, to pay for flights, to pay for family holidays, to buy cars. And, so within South Africa, you're asking, we've got this amazing framework, and yet we have so much corruption. We've got so much corporate fraud. We've got so much corporate greed. We've got so much, and yet we have this framework. Surely with this framework, every corporate in South Africa should be turning its back to doing dirty deals with politicians. And yet, every morning when we open up our news app, we're confronted with another person being found out. And it's no longer 5,000, it's now, 50 million, 100 million. The numbers become so big that they become for me, the easiest way to comprehend just the amount of fraud and corruption that is taking place with the help of corporates in South Africa is, I'm just keep on thinking, how many nurses is that? How many teachers is that? How many policemen is that? Monies that have just disappeared, or, yeah. So that's the wrestling. That's that tension. I had one hand up. Was it Sophie?
Yes, but don't worry, I kind of like answered my own question.
Do you want to share the question with us, maybe? Maybe the other people also have the similar question?
Just in terms of the way you said, like with wrestling the concepts, I was just wondering, like, how do you, not determine, but what do you classify a company when you can see they've completely abused, like, the certain rules and regulations? So yes, it's legal, but is it ethical? But I kind of like, I don't know, I feel like they can't be brought to, like, you know, court and whatever for that, but it is interesting to maybe look how they take advantage of people kind of, yeah, ethically, if it's not legally, but I don't know, somehow incorporate that into the assignment.
And also morally, and also morally. Think of different products that are sold that are just, it shouldn't be sold, but it's legal. Think of the tension between vaping and smoking. Should teenagers be able to buy a vape? But then the question is, 40 years ago, you could buy cigarettes, at the local cafe, so every generation has its own issues, struggles. Yeah, Sophie?
So, you know how we're talking about politicians and like certain industries? So do you think certain industries have made deals with politicians that to not ban certain products? Like, I think in Europe now, gel nail polish is banned. So I'm just saying, say, for example, there was a local manufacturer of gel and they like had a political contact. And as much as they had all the research, they never published it and they never banned it. Does that happen? Would you say that happens a lot in South Africa?
Absolutely, it does. We just don't hear about it. I can tell you from having worked in industry that I worked for, well, you all know that I worked for Tiger Brands, and Tiger Brands has purity baby foods. Now that's a very sensitive product. 95% of South Africans buy purity baby food. It is, if anybody, the corporate reputation, if anything happens to a child consuming that product, is immense. It is simply, you can't recover from it. The same way Enterprise, again, a Tiger Brands company, oof, now I'm deep cut now, died from listeriosis, and for a long while Tiger Brands just refused to admit guilt until a court forced them to, and this is many, many years later. So there was new legislation that came in to force companies, especially when it comes to sensitive products like products for children, to be very clear about the ingredients in it. And I can tell you that there were companies in the industry, we would call it the industry body. So all of us would belong to it. It's called the industry body. They would be called the industry body that would deal with government and discuss government around policy, things like labeling, food labeling policies, and those type of things. And I can tell you, the instructions to them was try to prevent this legislation from being enacted, because one, it would add significant cost, and two, there's stuff that we just didn't want to say. Not because they were harmful, but just because we were worried that people would misunderstand it. We were worried that consumers would read it and go, "This is going to kill me." But you've just been eating the product for the last 15 years and it hasn't killed you. But now we have to mention that it's in there. But that legislation went through. The food labeling legislation went through, and it's been the best thing ever for consumers. Because ultimately it's about consumer protection. It's about knowing what you're putting in your body, looking at the label and being able to know that the stuff that's in this container and the stuff that I'm putting in my body is on this label. And to answer your question, yes, there's lots of industry bodies that would sort of speak to government about policy and new laws and those type of things. And they sort of know when new laws are being discussed and sort of and they have influence and impact on how these policies are sort of written up and how these laws come to Parliament and gets voted on. But I can tell you it's not as bad as like in the US, where companies just straight up just buy politicians and to get legislation squashed or not put through. Great. Once again, as I said at the beginning, I'll try to make this evening shorter. But thank you very much for discussion. Thank you very much for all your contribution. I hope this gives you a bit of sort of impetus and a bit of help, a bit of a hupstreaky, so to say, to get going with this assignment. Please take your time with it. It's a lot of work, and don't rush it. Make use of AI. It's a wonderful tool, but don't copy paste but use it to give framework, to give write summaries to help you understand as well. All right, guys. Thank you very much, everybody. Let's just stop sharing and have a wonderful evening. Cheers.
Thank you,
Thank you
Theo.
so much.
Bye-bye.
See you. Have a good evening.
Thanks, Candace. Thanks, Rafia. Thanks. Cheers, guys. Bye.